Now, former South African President Thabo Mbeki has departed Ivory Coast without being able to mediate a deal between rival presidential candidates over the controversial election results. The country's overnight curfew has been extended for another week. VOA West Africa correspondent Scott Stearns reports from Abidjan.
Mr. Mbeki met again with incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo at the end of 2 days of talks meant to find a legitimate and peaceful solution to the political standoff.
Our immediate task is to report immediately to the African Union. I had a discussion earlier today with the Commission of the Union in Addis Ababa, and indeed the President of the Union, President Mutharika, African Union also, he called, and they are expecting that report so that the African Union can reflect as a matter of urgency on what needs to be done.
Mr. Gbagbo says he's been re-elected because the country's constitutional council annulled as fraudulent nearly 10% of all ballots cast, giving him 51% of the vote. Former Prime Minister Alassane Ouattara says he's the president because the United Nations certified Electoral Commission results that show him winning 54% of the vote. Mr. Ouattara and Mr. Gbagbo have both taken rival oaths of office and formed competing governments. Mr. Gbagbo's chosen Professor Gilbert Marie Mbeki as his new prime minister.
You know, we're coming out of an extremely long crisis, so we need to really start working in the interest of all of Ivory Coast.
Mr. Gbagbo is backed by senior military leaders who control southern regions, as well as by his party's militant youth wing.
I think that now people are discussing the issue. Politically speaking, we have to stay in that area. There's no way for violence now in Côte d'Ivoire. So I call all the Ivorian young people to stay cool, to stay calm, and then listen to what is going to be decided.
Mr. Ouattara has chosen former interim Prime Minister Guillaume Soro as his new Prime Minister and Defense Minister. Soro has already chaired a meeting of the Ouattara cabinet at the resort hotel his government is using as a base. Soro is also the former leader of rebels who still control northern regions of Ivory Coast and back Mr. Ouattara as president. With standing armies on both sides of the political divide, rebel spokesman Seydou Ouattara says there's need for quick international mediation to prevent further violence.
We think it's a socio-political problem. The army should distance themselves from all that so that a solution can be found, particularly as the international community, the national community and sub-regional community is implicated to try to find a solution to this crisis.
If Mr. Gbagbo does not step down, rebels say they'll have no choice but to resume their fight. Ouattara spokesman Patrick Achi says the former Prime Minister told Mr. Mbeki that everything is possible, but the election results are non-negotiable.
Alassane gave him the framework for the negotiations within the margins he's going to be able to accept, meaning that there is an elected president of Ivory Coast, Alassane Dramane Ouattara. Everything else, the conditions for the departure of the former president, are open to negotiation.
This vote was meant to reunite the country after a brief civil war, but Ivory Coast is now more sharply divided, and voters say the standoff cannot continue indefinitely. The international community is not waiting for things here to get worse. Belgium is bringing in paratroopers to boost security at its embassy. The United Nations is moving more than 400 non-essential personnel to Gambia. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Abidjan.